Hello again. One of the great advantages of growing older is that very little ever surprises one. Human affairs tend to follow time-worn and predictable paths, so that one adulterous affair ends much like another, and even new scams for the internet age are almost indistinguishable to ones from the 1970s, 1870s, or even 1770s. So it is that watching those around you embarking upon schemes that you know must inevitably end in ruin is a little like watching an old film that you've seen a dozen times before and the plot of which is very familiar. You feel like saying aloud, "Oh, this is a good bit. I know what happens next." Of course, with our new multicultural society, we have a new set of players, but they too fall into the same routines and roles as the rest of us after a while, and they take over roles which were previously the exclusive province of white English people. Take the shell game, for example, sometimes known as the cup and ball game, or its variant, the three-card trick, which is also known as Find a Lady or three-card Monte. This trick has been around since the time of the ancient Egyptians. It is shown in a painting from a tomb well over 2,000 years ago. The thumbnail to this video shows a more modern version, this time by Hieronymus Bosch, the Flemish artist. It was painted in the late 15th century, over 400 years ago, and shows a crowd of gullible fools watching a man play the shell game. I'm sure that viewers have seen this. They must have come across it sometime if they're old enough. Somebody has a pea or a little ball and then places it under a shell or cup. Then he moves the things around and invites members of the audience to bet on which cup or shell the pea will be found under. Normally this is worked with various assistants in the crowd, people who look as though they're winning, and it's all made very easy until the mug in the audience puts his money on when things suddenly go catastrophically wrong. Now, 50 years ago, one would see this trick being performed at racecourses or in the streets of London's Soho district, either as a shell game or Find a Lady, which is really the same thing. Those cheating people out of their money were invariably white Englishmen. These days, though, it tends to be Romanians operating this scam. Why this should be, I have no idea, but if viewers ever walk across Westminster Bridge leading to the Houses of Parliament, they're sure to find a group of Romanians cheating people out of their money in this way. In the description to this video, I give a link to a clip of film showing this. If I read in a newspaper of somebody being convicted of this offence, then I can guess at once that he will be Romanian rather than English. This does not mean, of course, that Romanians are more likely to be dishonest scam artists than English people, merely that times have changed and we now associate this crime with a certain nationality of foreigner. In the same way, robbery from the person used to be very popular in this country in Victorian times. Those attacking people in the street to get hold of their wallet and watch were known in the 1860s as garrotters. Although the expression mugging was also in use, it's actually an Old English expression for what was being done. Some people think it's an importation from the United States, but that's not true. It's the other way round. The Americans picked up the phrase mugging from us. These days, though, offences of this kind are almost exclusively committed by young men of Caribbean or African heritage. All of which brings me to the subject of this video, which is the hypocrisy of those people who call themselves anti-racists. Whenever I make a video about what I describe as guess the ethnicity, it causes some people to denounce me for racism and xenophobia. I say that I can guess the ethnicity or nationality of those convicted of or arrested for certain crimes, based only upon the nature of the offence, and there is outrage. How dare I say such a horrible thing? I must be racially prejudiced. The hypocrisy is this. Those anti-racists actually know precisely what I'm talking about, and they make similar assumptions themselves when watching the news or reading the papers. They know that if a much-loved family doctor is accused of having indecently assaulted women patients for years, then the odds are strongly in favour of his being called Dr. Chakrabarty rather than Dr. Jones. They know too that if a young man is in court charged with shooting somebody on a London street, then his Christian name is more likely to be Jarmaine or Jarmadius than it is Adam or Geoffrey. Progressive people, though, prefer to shut their eyes to such awful facts and pretend that they are blind to how society has changed and is changing still. Or take as another instance the appearance in court of 10 men charged with grooming girls, some of them underage. We are, of course, all supposed to pretend that this offence is more common among white men than those of Pakistani heritage, but at the same time, we all of us know perfectly well that that's not true. Before even reading the article, to which I give a link in the description to this video, most people will already know that these men are going to be called Mohammed Zahid and Nissa Hussain rather than David Smith or Bob Jackson. I'll give a link to the case reported today in the description to this video. Being able accurately to predict such things is not a symptom of racism at all, but rather a sign that you have been in the world long enough to understand how it works. The fact that gangs of Romanians have now taken over the cup and ball game and street gambling from English crooks tells us nothing useful about either English people or Romanians in general, but a great deal about the changing nature of our society. Pretending wilfully to be blind to the reality of life in modern Britain is not praiseworthy. It is rather an indication of somebody who takes pride in his or her ignorance and stupidity. I would not personally wish to feign those qualities, but there are an awful lot of well-meaning people who think that this is the way to show your goodwill and love of humanity these days.